Paul. We are going to be great. We are going to be recording today so that you can view the panel afterwards. If you don't want to be part of the recording in any way and you don't want to put your camera on or ask a verbal question, then don't worry, you can use the chat box function as well. So I'll get that up on the side so that I've got that there. Lovely. Sorry, I talk to myself while I'm on Zoom. I think it's probably what we all do, to be honest. Willing the technology to work for us. Okay, so it has gone 25-2, so I think we will make a start. Welcome everybody to the Public Sector Panel at the University of Plymouth 2022. It's very exciting to see you all here. My name is Charlotte Paul and I'm a Careers and Employability Consultant within the Careers Service at the university. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all because the panel year on year has been really, really interesting and we're always excited to welcome our guests along. The first thing I wanted to say really before we get into our introduction is just a little bit of housekeeping. So while our guests are talking in each segment, you might have questions for them. If you do, please put them in the chat box and that is something that I can address. We do also have a final questions section at the end. So if you do think of anything last minute, then just whack it in the chat box and I'll do my best to pass that on to our panelists. But if you wanted to ask a verbal question during that, you can put your mic on. But for the time being, while our guests are presenting, if you could keep your microphones on mute, that would be wonderful. So the first thing I wanted to say really, for those of you that are interested in working in the public sector, by golly, you have an awful lot of places that you could start looking. We know by research undertaken by the ONS in June of this year that 5.74 million people in the UK are employed in the public sector. And this tends to include key areas like healthcare, law enforcement, social care, education, and central/local government. And there's a lot of crossover between these sectors as well, because they tend to rely on each other in order to work. So there's an awful lot of opportunities out there for you if you are interested in working within the public sector. Today, we're going to be exploring a few of these key areas by talking to our guests today. And this is your chance to ask questions about what kind of career you can experience within the public sector. So please do think of anything that you'd like to ask and pop it in the chat box. So we're going to go straight in to our first guest. I'm really pleased to welcome Catherine Day, who is the Deputy Director of the Cabinet Office. So Catherine, there you are. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. It is completely brilliant to be here. I probably need to front up and not accept that job title because there are lots of deputy directors in the Cabinet Office and that makes me sound much grander than I am. I'm just one of many. And the last job I did was on a team that wrote this government's national security and international strategy. And we can talk a little bit more about that later if you'd like to.
Oh, yes,
but the first thing that I want to say is I absolutely love what I do. I've loved my career so far. Can't wait to see where it might take me next. That means I can talk about it for a very, very long time indeed. I'm going to limit myself very strictly to 10 minutes so that we can chat about stuff. I'm sorry I'm on my phone, so I can't see the chat. So you must shout if people would like to interact, because I'm also very happy to take interruptions, especially since I'm really sorry that I've got to go straight after my session. I'd like to stay, and I'm very happy to carry on the conversation in other ways. So maybe contact me through Charlotte if you would like to. Anyway, though, to get us going, what I thought that I would just talk quickly about is why I went into the public sector, why it attracted me, in case that resonates with you. A couple of things that I've really liked about what I've done, but also to balance that out, a little bit about what it's really like, because actually there's a lot of slog and it's not all sort of fun all of the time. And then maybe sort of a couple of snippets on advice that I wish I'd had earlier on, I've kind of worked out for myself.
Great, that sounds brilliant.
Is that okay? What I would really like to leave you with though, is three sort of thoughts around sort of public sector, public service careers. I mean, as you just said, Charlotte, there is an infinite variety. There are loads of really rewarding careers. Mine has been a kind of DIY, make it up as I go along. I've gravitated towards foreign affairs and national security policy because I find that interesting. But really, I mean, what a range there are, and Nazanin hopefully will give you some other insights too. The sort of second theme that has really struck me that I was sort of thinking about when sort of wondering about what it would be most useful to pass on to you is that so much is changing. So the nature of our world is changing, which means the nature of how we organize ourselves as a society and as a government is changing, which means that careers in government are changing just at a very practical level, and the sorts of people that we need are changing as well. And there are sort of loads of opportunities in different areas. And one of the things that attracted me to this sort of career actually was that I had this public service ethos, that I wanted the world to be a bit better. I studied law, and then I switched into biological anthropology, basically human evolution, because I realized that what I was really interested in wasn't actually the law itself, which these sort of judges keep coming along and changing just as soon as you've learned all of the cases, but actually, why we bother having laws in the first place, why we organize ourselves the way that we do. And it really feels to me, so I spent 20 years in government now, that the world is changing so fast now. We really need to rethink some of these structures. And I see the generations coming in now as being completely pivotal to that. So we've kind of kept things going for you, but we need you to come in with that sort of spirit of change, looking at the world, sort of thinking, okay, well, as a country, this is where we need to take ourselves. This is how we need to organize ourselves to adapt to that. And that cuts across all levels of government. So we need local government to be thinking like this just as much as central. And then linked to that, the final theme, because the world is so sort of complicated and interconnected these days, and because government, gone are the days now when government alone can address any of the big challenges that we face as a world or as a country. We kind of need everybody to be thinking public, no matter what sector you go into. So you might, whether or not you go into a sort of specific public sector career, I would really encourage you anyway to be thinking about whatever you go into, whether you're a hedge fund manager or a marine biologist, whatever, what can I do to contribute to the collective good? Because my goodness, we live in a world where everybody needs to be thinking that way. So why I went into it then, I've hinted at a couple of these things already, this sort of very strong desire to make the world a better place. And looking back on it, I think I was attracted to power and the ability to make that change, although it's slightly embarrassing to say that now. I had two thoughts at the time, because the internet didn't really exist at that point. I think if it had, I'd have tried to get into that. One was Hollywood, and one was government. And in the same week, I got an offer to act as an unpaid runner on a Steven Spielberg film. I also got an offer to join the civil service in the sort of role that Nazanin, who's going to talk to you next, is doing. And to this day, I wonder whether I made the right choice. But having said that, I have loved it, and I've been able to follow my interests. I started out as a bog standard trainee, basically, which is, and Nazanin, I'm sure we'll talk to you a little bit about this, just sort of let myself get sort of put through the training and development, which I do think is brilliant in the civil service. And then started to get interested in the world as a thing, got a job in foreign policy and never looked back. I've always thought that it's really important to get to the front lines of things, to be where change is really happening, to understand what's driving it. And that's why I made sure that I applied for jobs working on things like e-government and how we adapted to the internet when that was a big thing in the early 2000s, and then got myself posted to Iraq and to Afghanistan when we got involved there.
Wow.
The way in which I sort of approached it and the jobs that I've taken, I very much saw my 20s and early 30s as being a kind of training ground, and I should soak up as much as I possibly could, learn as much as I possibly could. And I think one of the bits of advice that I wish I'd had at the outset was, look, don't be in too much of a rush, soak it all up. Lives are long these days, there's quite a lot of time in them. We'll probably all have, several careers, certainly hope I will. But that's really how I approached my first few jobs. The absolute favourite job I had was making TV for Iraq, and this was an idea that just came out of one of the earlier jobs that I'd been doing. I felt that we should be doing a better job of explaining what our aims, actions and intentions were as a country if we were going to sort of send the military there and go and try and do things there, and was able to put together a team from the Iraqi diaspora largely, and we produced an hour's worth of news and information is what it started off being at first, and it grew into this massive community venture where there were fundraising concerts, we had a website connecting families and so on. Now that all sounds quite random, and the reason I wanted to mention that job in particular was that it was through that experience that I really realized actually the trick here is knowing what I want to do and the difference that I want to make. And then, sort of having learnt a bit by that stage about how government worked, it was quite easy to put it together. And it had a really, really big lasting impact. We were reuniting families in the end. It turned into a big community venture where the music company EMI was giving me music, for example. And actually, there are more of these quite unusual jobs and unexpected jobs in the public sector than you might think. The third thing that I wanted to touch on is what it's really like. And so while I've loved everything that I've done, and while things like making TV for Iraq were unexpected and great fun, the system that you're operating in has been set up for very good reasons to be quite bureaucratic. So you don't actually want government to be something that's radically changing all of the time. Our job is to make sure that strategically we're moving in a certain direction and that this doesn't get disrupted. And so we do have sort of hierarchies and we do have structures. We do go a bit too far with them sometimes, but they're there for a reason. And once you get the hang of working within them, then they're quite sort of fun to operate and can be incredibly effective. And you need that sort of way of operating if you're sort of in a crisis or a war zone. In my last minute that I've given myself, I wanted to chuck at you a couple of thoughts about advice I wish I'd had.
Great.
The first thing I wanted to say was just don't see anything as being permanent. If you have a bit of public service ethos about you, think about when you might want to do it. Think about how you might want to work with the public sector. You don't have to go into it to be a public servant. The second one I hinted at, take your time, don't worry about it. I mean, what I found in life is that there have been some inevitable compromises. I went into the public service knowing that I wouldn't be paid as well as my friends going into some other sectors, but on the other hand, and a lot better for NGOs and so on. when you start to think about family and so on, if that's something that you might like to think about in the future, then those sorts of things become a factor. But nothing's forever. It's a brilliant training ground. It's also a brilliant place to come and work once you've built up a bit of expertise or have some experience in something else. Government doesn't work unless it has people who know what they're talking about working in it, and that can range in my world from knowing another country really well to knowing an awful lot about food security and how we achieve that, to understanding how the diplomatic service or the armed forces or what have you operate. I think a bit about how you learn and how you develop, and what impact you want to have in life. That's completely impossible, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But if you can do a little bit of that as you go along, then it's easier to work out where you need to be to have the impact that you want to have. And that, I would say, is the one thing that makes me enthusiastic about the career I've had and where it might go next. It's because I've been able to follow my nose, have an impact, develop what I wanted to develop, and so on. And then finally, I think it's okay not to know what you want to do and to soak it up, and just to I ended up thinking, well, I'll do this. I'll turn down Steven Spielberg because it wasn't paid, which was a factor for me at the time. But I'll do this because it's worthwhile doing. It'll teach me interesting things, and it's while I grow up and make up my mind what I want to do, it will be good. I can have a good impact. Is that all right to get us going?
Yeah, absolutely. I what I would like to do is, if any of our students have any questions, please put them in the chat box, because I know, Catherine, you have to dash. I thought this would be a good opportunity to ask you a couple of key things. But I think what you said is really insightful, and it clearly shows that you've really enjoyed the work that you've done. And one thing that I wanted to ask you is, when you said about being on the front line of things, what attributes do you think someone would need in order to go straight in and just get stuck in? What attributes do you think would be helpful for them to have?
Exactly the attributes that Nazanin has, who's going to talk to you about it next. But look, some of the experiences that I've had are definitely not normal for public service. It's not normal to go and work in a war zone unless you have chosen to be there by being a member of the armed forces or what have you, and by being trained to be there. But inevitably, I'm going to say things like resilience. Less inevitably, think about your reasons for doing things. I mean, I do think that life is short, and it is worth spending it on the things that you think are important and that matter. And if you are going to go somewhere sort of dangerous on the front line, then it's very important for you to have squared with yourself that this is something worth doing. Another really interesting bit of advice, because front lines come in all sorts of different natures. And if you work in central government on policy work, this is another front line. This is about sort of defining what our country does about the biggest problems, where we take it. You're working very closely with ministers on things like that. The sorts of qualities you need for that, and the sorts of challenges that you come across. You're needing to define new areas. There's quite a lot of ethical challenge sometimes. So in a former job, for example, I was asked to write what subsequently became known as the dodgy dossier, if that rings a bell with anybody. So I was doing a communications job on Iraq. This is what led to the sort of TV program. And one of the things that the number 10 director of communications wanted to do was make a public case for why we should go to war there. I was asked to do this and said, yes, fine, I'll work with the intelligence agencies, we'll pull together all of the evidence that we've got, and we will, redact it and, put together something that we can publish. So put that proposal forward and was told, no, look, there's a lot of material already in the public domain, just, pull that together and that will do. And I wasn't very comfortable with that, and ended up saying, I don't think that that's how we should go about it, and turned the job down. And so I wanted also to mention that, because it's a feature of these public service careers that I think doesn't get talked about enough. You're dealing with ethical challenges quite a lot, and you need to take sort of quite real decisions for yourself, as well as for the country. And a bit of advice that a friend of mine actually was given once was, well, actually, if you have that ethos of wanting to serve the public and so on, then look for jobs, and if you have a sort of strong ethical sort of sense about you, then look for jobs where that's going to be useful. Don't be put off by going to work in a sort of grey zone somewhere. Don't be put off from, for example, going to work on, I don't know, the nuclear deterrent, for example, which is controversial. And, I know people who have issues with that. But that's really where having a strong sense of ethics comes into play. And the same is true in any sort of frontline job you might be asked to do at the cutting edge of things. There's always something sort of ethical to think about. That was really rambly, Charlotte, sorry.
No, it was really interesting. And I think this is the whole point, is, really being able to hear about these experiences and like you said, being able to say about what it's really like. So Catherine, are you happy if any of the students have any questions that I can reach out to you again with any particular questions they might have?
Yes, I am, absolutely. And I, as I say, haven't covered any of the nuts and bolts. Haven't really covered anything about how you would, practically get into it. But I hope that I've helped you to understand a little bit about whether it might be for you, whether that sort of thing sort of excites you or not. Because if it does, get involved.
That's brilliant. I mean, I've learned such an awful lot already, actually, I have to say, and I jotted down your key advice, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for imparting your wisdom to us, Catherine. And also, it's really nice to hear about your experiences. And one of the key things that I think was really interesting here was the world is changing, and the people we need to be ready to change, and we need people on the ground who want to make the world a better place. So I think that's a really good mantra to live by. But thank you so much. I've really enjoyed what you've had to say. If all the students on the call and all our participants can use your reaction button to give Catherine a little round of applause. I do this at every panel, Catherine. It's a bit naff, but I think it's great. Everyone's giving you a little Mexican wave of applause. As if we're in
That's
person.
Lovely. Thank you. And I'm sorry I need to leave, but I'm looking forward to Plymouth University students changing the world.
Excellent. Well, we've all got witnesses now, so we're going to have to. That's all I'll say. But thank you so much, Catherine. That was so insightful.
Bye-bye.
Well, I learned such a lot. I don't know about you guys, and it's only going to get better from here, because now we've got Nazanin with us. And you are on the civil service fast stream. You did the process. So tell us a little bit more about that and where you're at right now.
Absolutely. I do actually have some slides to share, so I'll give that
Oh,
a
fab.
go.
Lovely.
Hopefully it will work.
Yeah, no problem. Excellent.
Okay. Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Nazanin. I'm a second year generalist fast streamer. I'm currently posted to the Department for Work and Pensions, and I'm working on departmental governance. So that's all of the meetings of the senior officials in the department. and basically how the department is run. And my team provides the secretariat function, so things like agendas, meeting minutes, organizing logistics for everyone to meet at the right time, that sort of thing. And last year I was posted to the Department of International Trade, where I was working as an EU policy advisor, which was quite interesting, as many of you will be aware from media coverage. It's quite a topical issue in terms of UK-EU trade. And my path to the roles I've had so far was joining as an executive officer, so that's one grade below the fast stream entry point at the Department of Health and Social Care after graduating, and that was working on the COVID program. They were recruiting a lot of people at the time, obviously, because it was 2020. So that's how I got started in the civil service. And before that, I had studied modern languages for my undergraduate degree and also done a master's in international relations, which isn't of that much direct use to my current roles, but maybe it will be at some point in the future. So just to give a bit of an overview of the civil service as a whole, currently there's over 445,000 people who work as civil servants all over the country, and that kind of encompasses Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland as well. So the main objective of the civil service is to help the government of the day to develop and implement its policies as effectively as possible. So overall, trying to make society better in one form or another. As I'm sure you're aware, there are many, many different departments that form part of the civil service. So that's kind of the big departments like the Home Office, central departments like Cabinet Office, where Catherine works, Department for Education and Ministry of Justice. But there are also lots of smaller organizations, sometimes called arm's length bodies, that kind of fit into the wider picture, but might be less known. So things like the Food Standards Agency or the Health and Safety Executive, for example, those are all also civil service organizations. And within the civil service, there are plenty of different job roles that you could potentially do. And these are usually just called professions. So there's a communications profession, project delivery, digital and data. And there's also roles in things like national security, which of course is very much kind of a top priority, and policy and private office. So a huge variety is out there, and I think one of the key things to bear in mind among all of this is that the civil service is politically impartial and independent of government. So regardless of who the government of the day is, and we know we've had quite a few changes in that in the last few months, you still kind of have to get on with your job and you have a role to fill within that wider picture. And so how the fast stream fits into all of this. The fast stream is a development scheme aimed at graduates, and it's essentially supposed to be a fast track to leadership within the civil service. I think probably before getting into the detail, it's worth noting that until literally probably a couple of weeks ago or very, very recently, it was planned for the fast stream to be suspended in 2023. So it wasn't supposed to go ahead, but the new Prime Minister has a kind of different outlook on civil service efficiency and is less about cutting numbers and more about saving money. So it's fairly likely, or at least it's been communicated in some outlets, that the fast stream will be back on for 2023. So if it's something that interests you, do keep an eye out if applications open this year. And if not, I'll still kind of discuss other ways to get into the civil service if you're looking at doing that within the kind of next year or so. So as I mentioned, Fast Stream is a graduate program. Most of the streams within it would require a 2-2 in any university degree. Some would need higher and some would need specific degrees. Most of the programs are 3 to 4 years long, again, depending on the stream. There are 15 in total, including generalist, which is the one I'm on, but there's also commercial, project delivery, digital and data, finance, science and engineering. And some of the more specialist ones, like project delivery, for example, also include certain qualifications. So you'd also have kind of funded extra certificates and professional development coming out of it, whereas other programs like generalist don't have that. It's more just on the job learning that you'll have during the scheme. And the roles that you could have go across pretty much every government department doing all sorts of jobs. And the key thing about the fast stream is that on a kind of rotational basis, either every year or every 6 months, depending on the scheme, you will change roles and departments in what we call postings. So I think one of the key benefits of the fast stream is that it gives you really good exposure to different job roles and different departments, which I think really helps you in those early years of your career to establish what it is you actually want to do and what kind of things you enjoy. It's also great for building networks. So you'll essentially build a network in every department that you're posted to. And you also have access to a network of other fast streamers who are all in a similar position to you. One thing that I've really enjoyed about it in particular is that we also have fast stream networks. So the one I've been involved in is the Gender Equality Network. And that's how we've kind of come to doing events like this and doing outreach work as part of our corporate objective. So we have time kind of on the job to dedicate to these kinds of activities, which is great. And I would say it's also worth bearing in mind kind of balance. So some of the main kind of concerns that people might have on the fast stream is the requirement for relocation. So it is possible to be relocated pretty much anywhere in the country to do your job. There are exceptions for it though, if you have caring responsibilities or a medical condition or kind of specific personal circumstances, you can definitely get a relocation restriction, which helps you stay in the location that you want. So if you're already based in Manchester, for example, you can just do all of your fast stream postings in Manchester if your circumstances kind of meet that criteria. Another concern, which I think Catherine kind of mentioned in terms of public sector salaries, is that, of course, they're not really comparable to the private sector. And one aspect of the fast stream is that for everyone on the scheme, you all earn the same amount. So it was 28k when I started. It might be going up a bit with inflation, but there is no London waiting. So if you're moving from somewhere else to London, you might find it a bit more difficult, whereas the standard job in the civil service does have that extra kind of London waiting. So that's also worth bearing in mind as a consideration as well. The recruitment process for the fast stream, historically, it's been a combination of online tests, video interview, and an assessment center. I will say because the fast stream was off and then on again, we're not really sure what the next round of recruitment will be like and what kind of stages it will have. But I think this is broadly applicable to kind of any civil service or graduate program recruitment anyway, so I'll still go over it. The online tests are typically called work-based scenarios, so it will give you a situation that you might face if you're working in the civil service, and then some multiple choice options of what would you do if you were in this situation. And then some of those options are more correct, some of them are kind of not correct. And then once you pass that stage, there is a video interview. So that's pre-recorded. There's not actually kind of anyone talking to you. It's just a video. But that can work to your advantage because you can always pre-prepare your answers. It's pretty easy to guess what they will ask. If you just take a look at the fast stream website, it gives a list of the kind of strengths and behaviors that they're assessing you against. So you can really guess what they'll ask and prepare in advance of that. So I think what's key to bear in mind during these different stages of the process is that they're really looking for signs of teamwork, leadership, organization, value for money. All these things are kind of skills you'll need to have while you're on the fast stream, and also what they're looking for when they're recruiting into it. And then the kind of one of the final steps of the process is the assessment center. When I did it in 2019 or 2020, it was online because of COVID. I'm not sure if it's going to be back in person now or still virtual. But usually that's half a day, and it has a group exercise, an individual kind of role play exercise, and also a written exercise. I would say often these exercises are not really that challenging, but what's challenging is the time pressure around it. So you'll have to kind of be quite skilled in writing really quickly or kind of summarizing your ideas in quite a rapid and kind of concise way. Also worth noting is that many people don't get onto the fast stream on their first try at the online tests. I think I was successful on my second or third try, so just bear that in mind too, and definitely don't get disheartened if it doesn't go your way the first time round. That's very, very normal. So if the fast stream process isn't kind of suitable for you, or if you don't get on it, don't worry, you can always apply directly to civil service roles as a way in. So if you just Google civil service jobs, that'll take you to the main website where all civil service jobs have to be advertised externally. And on that, you can filter by location and department, and also grade I would say for new graduates, a good entry point can be EO, Executive Officer, or HEO, Higher Executive Officer. You may well want to even go under that if you want to, just to kind of get your foot in the door. And then once you're in, it's pretty easy to move around internally. So I wouldn't worry about kind of feeling that you've entered at a too low kind of point for being a graduate or anything like that. And one key point about civil service recruitment is that it's based on strengths and behaviors. Again, if you Google civil service strengths, civil service behaviors, it will give you a PDF document for each of those. And definitely take the time to read through and understand it, because that's essentially the criteria that they're recruiting for. So if you understand those, it will help you make your applications much stronger and kind of appropriate for the people who are recruiting you. So that was kind of a really quick run through of most of the key information. I hope that's helpful, and also do apologize about some of the uncertainty around the fast stream. I know it's definitely not helpful when you're kind of a student and trying to find a job, but definitely take a look at direct applications as well, and just familiarize yourselves if it interests you with what jobs are available. And I'm happy to take any questions if there's time for that.
Brilliant, Nazanin. That's really interesting to see. And like you say, we live in very changing times. So the fact that you know what you can tell us what you can about the 2023 fast stream is brilliant. So thank you so much. And the slides are really informative, actually. I was going to ask you, based on your experience of the fast stream process, how did you find it? How did it make you feel?
So I think the first couple of times I found it very stressful in terms of the application process. It was much harder before having gained some work experience. So I think as a student, it might be hard to find the exact examples that you need to kind of answer some of those questions. I would encourage anyone who has work experience and any kind of office-based experience, or literally anything that's outside of your studies, I would encourage you to kind of focus on those as opposed to giving examples from university alone, because I think that experience of having to work with other people, having to negotiate different views and kind of work in a team, that's quite different from kind of university-based work in my experience. So I would say that using professional experience examples was really the key in making my application successful the kind of second or third time round, much more so than when I was doing it kind of without any experience at all.
Brilliant. And Natasha in the chat asks, how long does the fast stream last for in terms of the process?
So in terms of the actual graduate program itself, it's 3 to 4 years depending on scheme. So generalists like myself, it's 3 years, but for some of the other schemes, like I think there's a statistics stream which is 4 years. So it will depend, but they do list all of the kind of timeframes on their website. And then in terms of the application timeframe, typically they would open in September and kind of be closed by now, but we've literally just heard that they might reopen for next year. So at this point, I can't really advise on what the timeframe would be. I would say it's probably on par with other graduate recruiters in terms of how long each stage would take.
That's fair enough. That's really great. Thank you. And somebody else in the chat asking was messaging me earlier about, I know some organisations do a tier 2 sponsorship for those that are international students wanting to work in the UK. Does the civil service offer that?
That's a really good question, and to be honest, not one that I'm familiar with, just because I'm a UK national. I would maybe look at some of those job vacancies and see what the nationality requirements are. I know for some you have to be UK national, and for others you need to just have resided in the UK for a certain number of years. But I'm not sure about visa sponsorships, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's still really helpful though, because obviously, you know, it comes down to what the student needs, but that's really helpful that on the job descriptions there are these elements there.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And we had one last question really, which was, how did you said earlier that it took you 2 attempts to get onto the application process. How did you keep yourself, how did you keep the momentum going during that time as you were in the application process?
So I think I was fortunate in that I did a master's degree immediately after my undergraduate degree, so I was still very much occupied with studying. So I wasn't kind of just applying for jobs, because I think that would in itself would have been quite stressful. But I think just kind of bearing in mind that the fast stream really isn't the be all and end all, and I think once you're in it, you realize that actually your role is not that different from the kind of HEO who's doing the exact same thing as you with extra London waiting, but just entered directly as opposed to being in the fast stream. So I think the main advantage of the scheme is that it kind of gives you a faster timeline to promotion, but that's not something that's impossible to enter directly. You'll just have to kind of take more initiative and move around more and kind of source those opportunities for yourself. But I think just understanding that this is one option of many that have after graduating. It's definitely not the only one. And there are many people who join having had previous work experience in other sectors as well. So I think it just echoes a point that Catherine said, that we have really long careers ahead of us. And hopefully there's no need to kind of panic about getting the perfect role the kind of first time round.
Absolutely. And I guess for you, the last question really is, what have you learned about yourself so far on this process?
That's a really good question. I found that I can adapt to different circumstances quite quickly and more than I had expected. So the fast stream kind of throws you into a new role every year, and then you have a couple of weeks to kind of acclimatize yourself to everything and get to know a new team, new department, new role. And I think that practice has been really helpful to teach me that I'm actually able to be resilient and adapt, because I just didn't have those opportunities as an undergrad or grad student. So it's good to kind of get the chance to do it. And once you're thrown in, you realize what kind of abilities you have.
Absolutely. And I guess if you were to compare how you were in your first year to now,
Exactly.
you've grown exponentially as a person. But it sounds really great, and I love the insights you gave us about the process, because like you said, sometimes it can be a little bit of a mystery and trying to pick out what works and how to apply. But that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Nazanin. I've certainly learned a lot from you, and you'll have to keep us posted on how things progress for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people have other questions, I'm happy to kind of answer those by email, but I also have to drop off for another meeting now. So thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much, and see you later. Bye.
Take care. So we've got Avery with us. I can see you in my little, there you are. There's lots of different screens everywhere. But I was going to say, could we all give Nazanin a quick round of applause, but she had to disappear quickly. So, but we'll hold that applause, that vigorous applause for Avery. Avery, how are you?
Doing good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, not too bad at all. I'm jotting down miles and miles of notes as we're speaking, and there's so much to learn, isn't there? So I want to hear all about your work with Southend-on-Sea City Council. So tell us about that.
I will. Let me just first, I have a presentation, so I just need to share my screen.
Aha, excellent.
Working, fingers crossed.
Oh, there we go. Oh, it's come up very big.
Okay, wait, I think that solved it, maybe.
That's better. Yes, we can see that now. Yes, brilliant.
I had to Google how to do this one. I am not very familiar with Zoom. But you can see everything all right?
Yes, we can see that. Brilliant.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Avery Viganti. I am a graduate management trainee at Southend-on-Sea City Council. I'm currently in my second year of the NGDP program, which stands for the National Graduate Development Program. So I was going to give you all a quick presentation about what is local government, what the NGDP is, why you should work in local government, and why you should join the NGDP program, who we're looking for in terms of candidates, some key dates and application process information to note, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for any questions that anyone may have.
Great. Before you begin, Avery, I'm so sorry. You are a little bit muffled and jumbled. So you might have to.
Can you wait? I'll put my headphones in.
Oh, great. Yeah, sorry about that. It sounds a little bit like you're underwater. The joys of technology.
It happens sometimes with the laptop, so I think the headset will hopefully fix that.
Excellent. I didn't want you to get full into it and then we were sort of having to pick through.
Yeah.
Okay, say something again. We can't hear you now. Again, technology. It's all right, we'll get there.
Okay.
Okay. Oh,
Maybe?
yep. Oh, say something else. Oh, dropped out a tad again. I can't hear you at all now. That's the only problem.
Or
we'll,
still
oh,
silly.
oh, say something else. What's your favorite breakfast?
I like oatmeal.
That's better. Great. We heard that. Avery likes oatmeal. Brilliant. Okay, good. That's, we can hear you much better now. Thank you for persevering with that.
I put it under a little stand, so hopefully if the audio drops out again, it'll just let me know and I'll try to do something else.
Will do.
Okay, so what is local government? So local government is responsible for a range of vital services to businesses and people in the local area. So some functions of local government that people may be familiar with is waste collection, social care, schools and education, and housing. But local government also has some lesser known functions such as licensing, business support, registrar services, and pest control. And in England, there are over 1 million people who work in local government, and this spans over different types of authorities, such as county councils, district councils, city councils, and boroughs, and that provide more than 800 different services in local communities. So in the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the local government services. So they provide different services such as adult and children's social care, homelessness, environmental health, policy, regenerations, etc. And departments in local authorities have to work together to provide these services to the local communities. So for example, policy is applicable in every department, be it national or internal policy. And creating a green economy will tie in with regeneration, economic development, and environmental health. So to give you all an example, I have collaboratively worked with several teams in my time in the local authority. In the climate change team, I worked with the waste department on a project to help promote recycling in the city. And there's also a few different front-facing services that work more directly with service users. This may be social workers, customer service agents, community engagement officers. And while I've mainly worked in strategic roles, I have engaged in a few instances directly with service users. So what is the NGDP? The NGDP is a 2-year fast-track graduate program for individuals who want to make a difference by joining local authorities. So throughout the program, you'll gain your ILM Level 7 qualification in leadership and management, and you'll have placements across several different departments in a local authority. So each council may be different in the number of placements that they offer, but they have to offer at least a minimum of 3 different placements across council services. So for example, my council offers the possibility to complete 4 placements, although our chief executive placement is mandatory, and corporate strategies placement is also highly encouraged because it gives you a really good understanding of how the council operates. And each placement lasts for 6 months. My council also offers around 15 different placements that I can choose from and put down in a preference list, and a lot of different services such as museums, regeneration, housing, ICT, adult and children's social care, etc. So the placement coordinator in my council tries to take into account my preferences although I may not be allocated to a department that was on my list, but the reason for that is usually there's an exciting project they need a graduate's help on. And I admit I was a bit hesitant when I got placed in corporate strategies because I didn't think that I would be very interested in policy, but I ended up loving the placement. And I got to really shape the placement to what I wanted to get out of it. So I leaned it very heavily towards environmental policy because I'm really interested in environmental sustainability. And so I was really highly encouraged to do so. I've also just started my third placement in the chief executive office. So that's where I get to attend some high-level meetings with the executive directors, and I help the chief exec manage his inbox and perform a wide variety of other tasks in the organization. So there's a starting salary of about £26,446, but this may change depending on if you live in or outer London, if it's applicable. And there usually are over 70 councils to choose from in England and Wales that participate in the scheme every year. So there's also a wide variety in the number of graduate places offered per council. So for example, my council offered two places for grads in my year, and then just hired 3 graduates in this year. But I've met other NGDP grads who have anywhere from 1 to 9 graduates in their year. So why should you join the NGDP? I joined the program and local government in general because I wanted to make a tangible difference and impact in the community. And the program really helps fast track your career in local government because you're exposed to so many different departments, people, and the wider public sector. So the placement offers amazing opportunities to explore different departments and learn about different management styles, as well as find out more about what you're passionate about. I've learned a lot of different skills ranging from networking to how to categorize waste in a data set. And although the work may be challenging at times, everyone in my council is extremely friendly and is just willing to help teach me new skills to help me thrive in my placements. I want to say it's also just really refreshing to be treated with respect and like I have something to offer. I was really worried going into my council that I'd just be seen as inexperienced grad with nothing really to offer. But I was so happy that wasn't the case, and being seen as a graduate, being a graduate was just being seen as being like an exciting new member of the team who can bring fresh ideas and different perspectives to the council. And it's why we have so many different placements. I think I said there's around like 15. It's because so many departments want to work with us, which is really nice feeling.
And quite right too.
Mm-hmm. So what does the NGDP offer? So it offers a wide-ranging experience across a variety of different services. I studied criminology and sociology at university, and while I love my degree, I also really wanted to get experience in environmental sustainability. So luckily, I was able to do a placement in the climate change team, which was a great learning and development opportunity since I had no experience in the area. And I was also able to take a really short course as well that my team encouraged me to apply for, which was about energy management. And there are a lot of different opportunities and doors that open with the program. So for example, I've recently did a tour of the House of Commons, and I met with several MPs from the East of England region because someone in the NGDP East of England network has connections to their MP. So it's a really great opportunity to build strong professional networks both in your council and outside with other members of your cohort, which there's usually around 200 people. You'll also receive a mentor from a senior leader position in the council. So this is either an executive director or a director. My mentor is the director of public health. And the councils also have flexible working, which is great because you can structure work around what works best for you. And you also may get local discounts, which ranging from, hair salons and cinema discounts to a discount to Shrek's Adventureland in London. Not had the privilege to go yet, but I do really want to. And I've spoken about my placements. However, there's a lot of other ones that graduates have done. For example, working with schools to develop a cultural and creative education strategy for the area, or working in a regeneration team to create an offer from the council to support budding local social enterprises. So careers after the NGDP. So many councils really want to retain the grads after the scheme ends. So for example, 81% of graduates were employed by their NGDP placement councils. 80% of graduates feel that the NGDP has helped them further their career, and 91% of trainees would recommend the program to others. I mean, I would definitely recommend the program to all of you. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm honestly sad that it's only a 2-year program, because I've gained more experience in a year than I thought was possible. And it's really helped fast track my career in environmental sustainability by gaining valuable experience in the field. So, who are we looking for? Candidates for the NGDP should be passionate about making a difference in communities, have the right to work in the UK, a minimum of a 2.2 undergraduate degree in any discipline. I think all the graduates in my councils have studied something different. I studied sociology and criminology, but others have studied politics, social policy, history, teaching, and foreign languages. So pretty much anything is accepted. And for equality, diversity, and inclusion, there's more information that can be found on the LGA, which is the Local Government Association's website. But I just wanted to highlight that reasonable adjustments can be made to match individual needs. There are networks on the program and beyond. So my council has several staff forums to promote equality, diversity, and inclusion. It's reflective of the diversity of the communities that we serve, and the graduation does not have to be recent. One of the new grads, I think, graduated about 10 years ago.
All right, so there's quite a lot of scope then for returning, and that definition of graduate is quite open, really.
Yeah, it definitely is. And so some key dates just to look out for. So the applications are still open until the 4th of January around midday. And that's when you just fill in a basic application form and some situational judgment tests. In February, you'll complete a video interview. In March, they have a virtual half-day candidate assessment center. In April, there's the opportunity for candidates to kind of get to know which councils are participating on the scheme for that year and go to virtual open days or drop-in sessions. And then in May and June is when all the council interviews will take place, and then offers will be sent around June, July. And in autumn is when the national management trainees will start at their councils and do their placements. So there are several key skills and behaviors that the LGA tends to look out for with the program, which is finding individuals that work well with others, have persuasive communication, both written and oral communication. So being able to choose kind of the right communication style to fit your audience. Planning and organization, so being able to work effectively to achieve objectives. Driver for results, so being able to take your own initiative and responsibility for your decisions to achieve results. Analysis and problem solving, motivation for learning and personal resilience, so being able to seek out any opportunities for personal learning and development, being able to cope with changes and kind of taking what you've learned in each placement onwards to your next. A commitment to local government and the wider community, and leadership potential, so being able to demonstrate understanding of key aspects of transformational leadership. But please go visit the LGA's website they have practice questions, videos, and top tier tips to help prepare you for the application process. So here is just some contact information if you would like to get in touch with anyone. And yeah, so thanks for listening to my presentation, and let me know if you have any questions.
Fantastic, Avery. Well, I've certainly got some questions for you. So while we run through a few of those with our students and staff on the call, if you do have any questions for Avery, please do put them in the chat box. Remember, this is your time to ask those nitty-gritty questions. So Avery, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about when you spoke about the fact that actually, you know, there's so many different backgrounds and disciplines that come together to work in these councils. How important is teamwork and collaboration in the public sector? You know, how do we kind of foster that that ability to work and collaborate together, do you think?
That's a really good question. I think it is definitely really, really important to work collaboratively, because it's a lot of departments, like there's not a single issue that's solved by like one department. It's usually a lot of different departments have to work together. So for example, with the like climate change, and we're committed to net zero, and being able to achieve that, the climate change team has to work with virtually every department, such as like housing, to like retrofit houses so that it brings like the carbonization and everything. So I think the way to foster that is honestly just getting to know people in other teams. That may sound kind of dumb, but it's just knowing who to turn to if you have any questions, or knowing who does what in every department is so important. And that's one of the things that I wanted to find the most when I started. I was like, who does what in what team, and how can I work together with them in any future project? And that's one of the reasons they really like grads, because we go across to so many different departments that we're just kind of foster networks between us. And so a lot of times if someone has a question, they'll ask a graduate and be like, do you know who in which department would help me with this? So it's very valuable.
So really, our students should be thinking about networking with everybody, not just people on their courses, but the staff, the support services, joining societies. Do you think that's probably a good way of encouraging that?
Definitely, yeah, because just having a casual conversation with someone is just really important. I always thought networking was like such a scary word, but it is just talk to people and get to know someone, find out what their interests are and what they do.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's fantastic advice. And what do you think graduates offer that is unique?
Sorry, cut off a tiny bit.
Oh, that's okay. So what do you think it is that graduates can offer that is unique?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's just, we have like we know a lot of different ways to do things. So someone who may be working at the council for a long time, they're like, oh, we've kind of always done things this way, we're open to new ideas, and maybe they're just like, we can't think of any other way to do this. And for someone new coming in who's worked, or who's either worked or has just gone to uni, we all have such different perspectives, and you know where we've come from and different ways for doing things. Like I'm from Germany, so the ways that I like have been brought up, it was a bit different than here. So I'll just say some ideas of something that's very common in Germany, and they'll be like, we never thought to do it like that. So it's just really, you know, just all of your perspectives and everything that you've learned is just really helpful.
And I guess having the confidence too as well. But like you said, if you feel really valued within the councils, and it sounds nice that they understand what you have to offer, which is really, really great. So does anybody have any questions while we've got Avery on the call? I'm just monitoring the chat box. Just keep an extra eye out. Somebody has just sent me through something. Bear with me in my own messages. Sorry, you'd think I'd be used to Zoom by now, but every so often.
Same way as well. I get Teams and Zoom just mixed up all the time. So,
So one of the questions we've had really is, I'll come back to your question in a second, Gemma. I've just seen that pop through. But somebody messaged me to say, you mentioned that a lot of these opportunities are looking for any discipline. But do you have to have some kind of specific council experience that will give you the edge over the competition?
I'd say not at all. I had zero like experience. I think I had just graduated, and this was the first job that I got. And it's just basically, if you want to know more about local government and you're just passionate about helping people and wanting to be in local government, they don't like, past experience is always great, I think, but it is not at all a necessity, and you won't get, you know, chosen over someone else just because you have experience. So it's very level playing field.
Excellent. That's what we like. And Gemma in the chat says, do these kind of schemes extend to Plymouth City Council? Do you know?
I am not too sure. It just depends. If you can check, I think, the website to see if they have signed up before in the past. But they are always looking, or like the NGP is always looking for more councils to get involved. So if they haven't been involved in the past and somewhere that you'd really like to join, you could even email the council and be like, have you heard of the NGP, and will you consider, you know, joining the scheme? So I'm not entirely sure, unfortunately, but it changes a bit every year. New councils are joining, some take a year out, but yeah, I think it's usually around 70 councils to choose from.
But maybe Plymouth could be on the list. Maybe we could start a letter writing campaign. You never know.
That'd be great.
You heard it here first, everybody. Honestly, Avery, it's been so nice chatting to you, and I'd like to invite all of our observers and our students on the call to give Avery a lovely round of applause using your reaction button. This is the last one of the day, so make it a good one. I'm also going to do the little party popper emoji there for you. But thank you so much, Avery. I've learned such an awful lot from you. If anyone has any questions for Avery, are you happy if they reach out to me and then I can pass them on to you?
Of course, yeah, if you have any questions, yeah. So thanks for having me.
Amazing. No, thank you for being here. It's absolutely brilliant. I've written down so many things. And the one thing that what we're going to do now is we're going to have a slight change to proceedings because unfortunately Darren Weeks, who was on our programme from the Office for National Statistics, that's a hard word to say, Office for National Statistics, that's better. Unfortunately, he's having some massive tech issues today and he can't actually join the call, which is an absolute shame. I was really looking forward to speaking to him. However, if anybody does have any questions for Darren, based on we've got Darren's biography in the program there, and if you have any questions, then please do get in touch with us and we can pass on some questions to him. But what I want to do now, so we're going to close a little bit early, but before we do, I just wanted to give you guys a final opportunity to pop something in the chat box if you'd like to ask a question or two about the public sector generally. But I wanted to end on a couple of key messages that we got from today. So I've written in bright pink pen, so I should be able to see it fine. Some of the key bits of advice we've had here have been really inspirational, I feel. Catherine was talking about learn as much as you can, take your time, don't see anything as permanent, and think about how you learn. And what was really nice about what Catherine was talking about was actually the public sector is huge, there's lots of opportunities, but ultimately think public. That was her key message there. Nazanin was telling us about the public sector, no she wasn't, the civil service fast stream, look at the wrong thing, the civil service fast stream, and how the scheme works, what to expect. And again, 445,000 civil servants all over the UK. That's massive. Again, huge variety there. And Avery was talking about this amazing program and what it offers, and that policy is within all of them. And it's really very much about collaboration, flexibility, bringing a fresh outlook to things. And what was really nice about what Avery was talking about was actually there's still this ongoing professional and personal development. And you've probably heard within the career service, we talk about this a lot, about how professional development is something you will do throughout your career, wherever you go. And it sounds like the LGA has lots of opportunities for you to do that throughout your time on a council. So I think you'll agree with me that we've learned such a lot from our guests today. And it's kind of a case now of taking those key bits of advice and acting on it. So one of the things I wanted to remind you about in terms of what we can offer as a careers service is help with these applications and application processes. So for example, in the civil service, we know that the fast stream application process involves assessment centres, interviews, as does the local government association process. So we do offer accelerate workshops on things like CVs, interview skills. These are the things that we can help you with. We can also give you one-to-one guidance appointments to talk about how you can best prepare for these if you have any worries or concerns. We've also got a lot of online resources, so do make sure that you go onto our website and look up digital career resources. We've got Interview 360, we've got all these key tips about assessment centres, there's podcasts, articles, you name it, we've got it. There's something for every type of learner out there. So the last thing I wanted to say was thank you everyone for coming. I hope you found it useful, and we will be putting the recording up, I believe, on YouTube. guys in events. I'm pretty sure I've got that right. We're putting that up as soon
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tash. I couldn't quite
worries.
remember if it was or not. So we will be putting the recording up and take some of these lovely bits of advice today. So we'll stop the recording now.